Hello and welcome to Ianto, Wales and Beyond. And today, our new episode, we're going to be we're very gracious to have here Aurore Heinze MD. She's joining us from the US, and I've known Aurore now for a while, and this is the first opportunity we've had really to speak like this. And we're going to try and cover a few topics that are close to her heart and share some knowledge and. Yeah, we'll just take it from there. So, Rory, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience, and yeah, we'll just start from there. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Ianto. I'm Aurore, like Lion Roar, Heinze, and I was very honored actually when you got my book a few years ago and I was able to feature your work. I felt so excited when I got that special Earth from Wales when it arrived in the mail. I think that really was our connection, and was slathering all over myself, and
Yeah.
it just felt so good. I think I remember like my Irish grandmother, we used to burn peat, in the house, and the smell of peat and just having that little bit of earth, that little piece of the motherland. And so I was very honored about that. So thank you. And I appreciate the work you're still doing. And
Thank
I'm excited, I'm always excited about what you're doing. You're very active, and I think you're revolutionary in that way. I think we we healers in the world, we've had to sort of reframe in modern times, like,
you.
how do we get the message out? How can we heal? How can we overcome some of these barriers? And I think you're very good at that. So thank you.
Thank you. I try, uh, clumsy at times. I'll be honest, but yeah, I keep to my vision or my goal, should I say? So, and the same as to you. I admire the work that you've done and what you've been through as a person on your journey. And
Thank you. Thank you
no,
for
no, I
recognizing
mean
that. I
that.
know.
I mean that. I do understand. It's not easy. We connected first on LinkedIn, and I know you were deplatformed. Then I was deplatformed, as were many people at that time who tended to speak out. But there we are. So I think what I think would be good now is for you. You've got so much information to share. We'd probably be here for hours, but I think. If we can, what we've spoken about over the last few weeks, and maybe a little bit of your background. I know you're an author. You've studied these greats, and I want to try and put that knowledge into today and how that can help humanity right now. But if you want to start, how you want to start, and we'll just take it from there. And yeah, I'm sure it'll be
I,
wonderful.
I think that from the last time, and I feel like you and I inspire each other. I feel like every time we connect, I get all these sort of neurons going off and connections and things. And I've been really contemplating lately my own work. I think and you have my books, that the first 25 years of my life, I really focused on Wilhelm Reich's work and orgonomy. So much so to the point where I hadn't really even read anything for just really pleasure during that time. I was always constantly studying Reich's work, also in therapy, really, really into body mind health, the body mind connection, and like redefining that as something outside of just the new age, mumbo jumbo, Louise Hay, body mind, but really wanting to honor Reich for his work and his sacrifice for humanity, and also wanting to protect his work because, as you know, as they do to so many people that have been deplatformed in history, once they sort of get, either get rid of you or somehow sort of they try to bury you, and then they try to take your work and here, I'll push the camera back a little bit. They take your work and they kind of like repackage it and then like manipulate it to create something new for humanity. And so that's really what they did with Reich and Louise Hay. Like all of his work and research was sort of deleted because he was healing people of mental illness, essentially. And so the side part of that is like when they were healing the mind, then the body was following. And I thought that in and of itself was so revolutionary, just as a wake up for me. I think you and I talked about when we both woke up to reality. Mine was like 1999 when I came across David Icke's work early on.
Yeah.
And then we had Art Bell here in the United States, and so there was always this understanding something else was going on, behind what was going on. And so I made that my life work, and I was at the same time also into Steiner's work, but primarily for Waldorf education because, my kids were little and I was homeschooling them. And also tapping into some of, I think you and I talked about Summerhill. I think you're familiar with Summerhill over there in the UK, the democratic school system and his work, which I was a big fan of. So I tried to just stay in my lane with that for like 20 years because one part of it was I was homeschooling, I had 3 children, and I was really like, I'm such a person that takes in so much information, takes in so much, and I dedicate myself so much. I almost knew like I'm gonna take this chunk of Waldorf, focus on Waldorf, and like I really can't get into the other stuff right now. But another part of that, which I just tapped into recently through our like correspondences and my own realization, was that I was afraid. I was afraid of Steiner's work. I was afraid of basically what I would find out. And I had listened to a lot of people's opinions about Steiner without looking at it myself because, Steiner's work is so big and it goes into so many different areas like agriculture and psychology, art, so many different things that I think I just knew myself and was like, well, I'm going to find out, I'm a person that goes all the way. So I was thinking, I'm going to find out something about Steiner I'm not going to like, and I'm going to have to put my foot down, and then I'm going to have to throw it all out. And that's why I really I didn't want to venture too much to even prove these people wrong. And so it was only until, after my kids graduated and I went through that dark night of the soul of deplatforming, and like that deplatforming for me runs very, very deep. I mean, I've been targeted, my family's been targeted, and it's enveloped my life so much even at this point. But about 5 years ago, I started really researching Steiner and dedicating a couple hours every day to learning and like reading his work. And I feel so surprised and so mad at myself that I didn't research it sooner. And it was really the missing link out of Reich's work, which, Reich was body and mind, and he was an atheist, and I appreciated that about him. But at the same time, Steiner was really basically saying body and mind are basically the same, and then there's spirit and soul. So he has that whole work and lecture, which is I think it's called body, 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 mind, spirit. Basically, it's body, mind, spirit, soul. It's psychology. So he talks about, even that's almost splitting off from Reich's work on a higher level of like, okay, you've got the body and mind, let's focus on the spiritual level of it. So maybe it just came at the right time. Obviously, everything happens for a reason. But when I was at I think it's the biggest used bookstore in the United States, one of the oldest, a couple years ago, I went to get a Steiner book and I found out they were all banned. They had taken them all out. And I had like a real like sick feeling about it, like a shock and like an understanding of like, I mean, they're changing history. There's a real threat here of information of our past, not just in what Steiner says, but he's a real record. When you listen to it, somebody speaking in the 1900s, his reality, what he understood, what was around him, I can hear, and even in like his lectures or his books, you can see things that were going on that were happening then that we've been really misled about just historically. And that's of interest too, to block it out. Like, and I think, I don't know if we had connected about this. One story was about when he was in, Steiner was, I think he was in Amsterdam, and in the newspaper was a picture of a woman and no, an ape holding a baby. And Steiner said that they were telling people in Europe that in the United States in the 1900s, they were already using apes as nannies for children. And like that, it was already happening. And so like, and he has a whole lecture on it, just like without even him having to verify it, just like there's nowhere good this is going to go. Like, you know, that's like such a evolution of humanity, of like we're replacing humans with animals, and then now, you know, we're basically moved towards transhumanism with the computer and the robot. So just listening to that was so shocking to me. I thought that's, besides what he says as being revolutionary, just spiritually revolutionary, but he gives us a picture of the way things used to be and things that we didn't know about and things that have been sort of and maybe not prioritized or brought out to the public. And I think that makes it a threat. But there's a lot of people who say he was a racist, anti-Semitic, all these things. I was always coming up against those people when they found out I was a Waldorfer. And because I'm such a fighter and I'm such a person that defends, you know, I just didn't want to get into it. I carved my little spot and I said, this is my Waldorf spot. This is where I'm happy to be. You know, I'm sorry if you think he's these things, like, but after 5 years of research and reading and 100% really committing myself to his work, I haven't found anything yet to show me that he's any of those things. So I'm not sure if they're just sort of pushing people away from Steiner just by word of mouth and people defaming someone, like they could for about you or me.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes people to say, hey, you know her, she's this, and then people are like, oh, I don't even want to look at her. And then you know, you say some of these words and these ideas that are really been frowned upon in our society. I couldn't believe I actually succumbed to that too and listened to other people and not research myself. So that's my little soapbox of how everything kind of is going and gone and where it is now.
Can I ask you a question? I don't know if I don't think we've spoken about this. I'm not sure, but when I was working at a retreat the other day, like an eco off the grid retreat, and so we brought up Steiner because they've got like a home schooling system going on there. So I was interested to hear what they knew about Waldorf, and I wanted their views on it because they try and implement different modalities to their little community there. And the guy said, "Oh, did you know that Steiner had a revelation in Penmaenmawr?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Yeah, he was travelling the North Wales coast, and he went up into the Druid circle, and apparently he had a revelation in the circle, like something came to him. I don't. Have you ever read that?"
Actually, I think I have read that recently only because, and this is sort of another, I guess, in favor, I want to say, of the algorithms. I mean, I feel like we spend so much time talking about our violation of privacy and stuff, but really how my algorithms have aligned, even on YouTube. I came across about a year ago the Parsifal lectures of Steiner, and and the Holy Grail. And wow, I wish I would have read that when I was like 21 or 22, or had that. My mind was so blown about the story and about Parsifal, and then it also connected me to your area as well. And yeah, I can't say for sure, but I know, because actually I can send it to you. I have all of his Parsifal lectures
Right,
saved on
yeah.
a private list, and I can send it to you. I've been trying to get through them, and there's an excellent book by Charles Kovacs, a Waldorf teacher, about Parsifal that I read. It's for like 16-year-olds at the Waldorf school. It's a real coming of age story of Parsifal, but it's absolutely incredible. I read it 6 months ago. If you go on my YouTube channel, I actually recorded myself um reading it just recently for my son, who loves those types of stories. I mean, it's not like an audiobook or anything. There's some background noise. It's really just a little labor of love, but it's a story that anybody who's starting to wake up, or children that are becoming adults and coming into themselves. uh he talks about how that story of Parsifal is exactly where, I think the story of Parsifal is like, he doesn't ask a question. He's been taught to be a knight, and he's been taught to be, um almost like, he was trying to be polite, and then in his aspect of being polite, he missed the grail. And so then he has to go through all this sorrow, all this life experience, um until he comes upon, he has a chance again to embrace the grail, which eludes him. And so for me, I think just turning 50 last year, that story felt so significant to me, just in my own life journey. And I think you too, exactly, like, we come onto this sort of truth, and we understand these things, and they come like grace to us as like healing revelations, and then we try to assimilate it in our life. And then that's pretty much like what happens to Parsifal. He wasn't ready for the grail yet. He had to have the life experience, and he had to go through initiation, true life initiation, by just living life. Not even in the sense of like the ancient Egyptians and the Greeks about how they would approach initiation. And this is actually going into what Steiner talks about with Christian initiation of the new epoch that we're in, which is, we don't have to go and be buried for 3 days in the ground and all that. We have a new process of initiation that's been open to us. And we can embrace the grail and the truth, and higher levels of ascension in a new way. We don't have to. And I think you and I, that's what we were talking about, anachronism and atavism, is we have this people that have like woken up. And I was guilty of that too. I spent a lot of years in the New Age sort of circle, is that, oh, the ancients, they had it right. We got to go back. We got to go back 2,000 years. We got to go back 5,000 years. And Steiner, that's all part of his work. Like, yeah, so we can learn from the past. We can learn from those things, but we need to really embrace the present, and like the last 2,000 years, which people keep wanting to go back, and we really don't have to. And it also, what else I'm thinking that relates to is, I always have this conversation with people, is, circumcision in the United States, where these people will defend it, and, a Christian person will defend it, and they'll say, oh, but I say, why would you do it? We don't have to do it. That's the Old Testament, and we're not Jews. We don't have to even do that. Like, embrace the now. I mean, come into the last 2,000 years. So I feel like I'm constantly sort of waking up to the present, as are you, as I see with your work. You're constantly, it's like a building block. We're sort of just like, I realized I was going so many steps backwards, and then we sort of catch up, and then we I think we try to figure it out ourselves, and that's where we go wrong. And I think that's how we get stuck in our algorithms on social media and stuff, which just once we're onto something, it keeps feeding it to us and feeding to us, or we can't get out of the loop anymore. It's much harder for us to break through patterns we're supposed to evolve from. So, yeah, I've been just thinking about that myself recently about, even going back into my love of the Celtic stories and everything. And he does have a lecture on the Druids, which I don't feel like I've spent enough time with because I think it's on my list. So we'll listen to it together. I feel like when I get the book too, when I read his work, I can listen to the lecture so many times, but then when I read it, I'm like, what? Like I gain so much more out of reading it, but that's probably true. I would assume that's probably true. Steiner, um, he talked a lot about, is it Tintagel, where the King Arthur,
Uh,
uh,
yeah, I know what you mean.
Tintagel?
Yeah,
Like,
Tintagel.
yeah,
It's
he talks a
it's a
lot about
difficult
that.
word for my Welsh. Yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah, he talks about, you have the real place, and then you have the spiritual place, and
Yeah,
it's basically in the astral realm that castle exists.
yeah.
And so you have the physical imprint, like you would have with Stonehenge,
Like
or
Shambhala,
probably where he's, what is
a
it?
bit like Shambhala.
Yes, yes. Like you can visit it, and like you enter into these places. I just had a dream recently, and I made a picture of it, and it came very clearly in my mind, and it was that Celtic symbol. I thought it was the Book of Kells, but when I looked up the symbol, it wasn't in the Book of Kells. It was in a different book. I think it was the Book of Duro. And you might know what I'm talking about. Actually, I wonder if I have it right here to show you behind me. But it's like three spirals within a bigger spiral. And in my dream, I like went through it, like I time traveled in it. And then I woke up real quick and I drew it, and then I looked it up, and I was just really grateful. I thought like my Celtic heritage just is like coming back to me. Like I'm seeing it in the I'm seeing it in the astral, I'm
Yeah,
seeing it when I sleep, and so that's always important to me. Like I'm very dependent on my dreams. That's one reason why I had to stop using marijuana, because it was taking my dream life from me. And I'm like a person who, like, I need my dream life, and I couldn't stand, I get that real heavy sleep where it's almost like I've missed the night.
yeah,
Um so I'm really appreciative of those ancient memories, I guess, we share.
yeah. I like dreaming.
And you're there. I mean, you're living it. You're an ancestor, your family, you're in. That's one thing I realized when I'm in Italy. This understanding, like, these are the natives, like this is like their land, and I think everybody in Italy is very careful about not wanting to be nationalistic. They're very, very protective over that. And if you say that to them, overwhelmingly they'll say no, no, no. Italy is a newer country. We come from many, like, they don't want to give in to that. And like in the United States, that's where people are all thinking like, this is who we are, we're different, we're better, it creates nationalist feelings. But I had that overwhelming feeling when you get there, and you like, I would feel that probably in Wales too, arriving and saying, look at this land, like you can feel it, and you're part of that sacred earth. That's, it's in your, it's really a part of you. I find that, I think, to be very powerful as just an American who, I'm like sort of like a vagabond, like I'm not supposed to be here. And then my family came because from the potato famine. So, um, never really feeling welcomed here, and always being made to feel like, you know, being a white person in the United States, that comes with so much responsibility. I don't take that lightly because, as you know, I've had many opportunities in my life to do things different and better for myself, but I've chosen not to because I always think about other people, and I always think about if it's going to be good for me, it's got to be good for everyone. And I think that's why my own situation I've been going through politically has taken so long, because I've had chances to basically get out of the Truman Show. You know, I had the little
Hmm.
opening to me, and then I said, no, like, it's got to be more than this. It's got to be more than just me. And that's something I've demanded for my life. But I think that's something that all of us here in the United States need to, it's our responsibility. If you can help, you should. And, you know, we can't just keep stepping all over each other materialistically to try to reach the top. And that's really where we're at right now, I think, in the world, is this drive for materialism,
Yeah.
which has really poisoned unity consciousness. You know, I think a lot of people, maybe you know, I know people I knew 20 years ago, really cool people, like in Ann Arbor I used to hang out with and stuff, like drum circles and stuff. And they like slowly became these influencer figures, just focused on money and like exploiting whatever, you know what it's just, you see the people like fall into that Pied Piper. Um,
Hmm.
and I think also, speaking in Pied Piper, you know, the story of the Pied Piper, I'm sorry, that's my dog snoring. I don't know if you hear him. The story of the Pied Piper, you know, there was that kid that couldn't get in. He followed they all followed the Pied Piper. That dude took the kids to the mountain. And then the child that was lame and had a hard time walking, he wasn't let in. And he was so sad he was rejected. He was the one that went back to the city and told the parents and said, oh, the Pied Piper took all the kids for the fun in the mountain and they didn't let me in. And then the parents were like, oh my gosh. So I feel like in some ways that's me. I'm that person who felt like I was rejected and not let in the mountain. And then when you see what the mountain actually really is, you understand you weren't rejected, you were protected.
Hmm.
And then once you understand that, you understand you have a responsibility for the other ones that are in the mountain that want to come out. Can't just forget about them, right?
No, no, I can't. No. That's a good analogy, actually. I like that.
I just recently, you know, my kids with the Waldorf, just you know, I did all the fairy tales for so many years,
Hmm.
and I still am in the fairy tales. I read them now in Italian, mostly to help me with my language, but that story of the Pied Piper really just keeps resonating with me, because if you ever look back, it's a true story. Like, there was some dude and something weird going on in that town Hamlin. Reminds me of, you know, they said those people who had the St. Vitus dance where they kept hearing the music and they kept dancing and dancing until they died, and it was like a phenomenon. Something came over these people and they couldn't stop dancing for days, and then the story of the Pied Piper is kind of a mysterious story like that. I mean, it's a legend. Um, Maybe connected to who we were talking about, Casper Hauser,
Yeah,
the child of
yeah.
Europe.
Wow, there's so many different, like you and you know, maybe the audience isn't aware of the Casper Hauser. You know, it's a fascinating story, and there's so many different opinions on there, isn't there? You know, I was looking at all the videos the other day.
Right? On YouTube, I was
Yeah,
too.
there's
Did
so
you see there's
many.
a guy in UK? I think he might even, I was going to ask you if he's from Wales. I can send it to you. You probably saw the same video. He was like in a pub and he gave a whole entire talk on Casper Hauser, and his opinion was, I think that he was like royalty
Yeah.
and was kept away. Some people say he was a time traveler. Like, some people say, because Steiner talks so much about Casper Hauser and how he was treated and how, what a unique human being he was, but how the animals loved him. like he had this ability, like Snow White, he had such a pure understanding of the world, and that in and of itself is a threat. I saw that about myself and about
Um,
even my children, just raising them in an alternative environment. And when you go out into the quote unquote real world, um, people see that you can see and they don't want to see. And then when you see things so beautiful, like you see things that are bad, but then when you see things so beautiful, as I've always been very ocularly, I want to say sensitive, um, they kind of treat you like like an anomaly, like, oh wow, you always, like it's so unusual, like you appreciate something visually, like because I also have with the art, when I see art, that syndrome, when you see the art you cry.
yeah,
I have that, and like somebody diagnosed me and I looked it up and I was like, I'm just appreciating the art, like visually, why is it a syndrome? Like,
yeah, yeah. Why is there a label for joy and happiness and so?
right? Like there's something wrong with you. Like, oh, you've got that problem where like you see something with your eyes and interpret its meaning, like something's,
Yeah,
and that's also Steiner talks so much about art as art being exponentially, and he relates it to Goethe and art, like that's really the process that we have,
mm,
um for ascension and initiation is through art, because and I think you and I talked about this before. I've been working on my new book series for 6 years now, and I feel like every time I've started, I've restarted, and I didn't really want it to be just a continuation of Beyond Natural Cures, body and mind. I wanted it to be something really, a paradigm shift of, and I wanted it to really stand out as something new and different. And I feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm sort of ready to repose these things, you know, s- it's in my head, so I have to sort of get it out and express it to the best I can. But this idea I've had about making a book of pictures,
okay.
like I think you've seen some of the diagrams I've made. I make diagrams of
Yeah,
Steiner's work, and um, people can, I guess, read Steiner to try to decipher it. But he talks about with art of us not even looking at it allegorically or even abstract, but really letting it change you and receiving the message. Goethe's book, I don't know if you ever read it, white, the green snake and the white lily.
no, I'm aware of some of his work. I did cross-reference, but I haven't read the book. No.
It's like it is it's like supposed to be a children's book.
Okay.
And it's really beautiful, like the paintings and stuff. Like, I think I have the hardcover of it and I had it for my kids, but I recently took it out and read it again because Steiner was saying, it's not meant to be interpreted. You know how we do that, like with David Lynch
Yeah.
movies, like what did he mean? What was the meaning behind Stanley Kubrick? And like all these people are like, what's the meaning behind the meaning behind the meaning? And Steiner said, we read this fairy tale Goethe wrote, and then we let it change us, we let it sit with us, we let it arrive to us, the meaning. Like we're not dependent on getting on Google and like, what does green snake mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
what is the secret behind, they always want us going down the rabbit hole, down the rabbit hole, down the rabbit hole. And then, you get stuck in that rabbit hole because I'm somebody, like I've seen that, like really within the last 5 years on social media, especially. You'll follow an account and then like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you're like, come on, man. Like, how far are you gonna go with this? Like, it's just never ending because it becomes abstract. And really that's what Steiner says is a problem, is abstract thinking is a threat to us, to humanity, because our job right now in this epoch is to give meaning to words again. And so they've changed the meaning of words, and we have sarcasm, and then words don't mean what they mean anymore, or like we use words like so offensively to describe something else. And so we basically, and we've talked about too, you and I talked about how they do that with people,
Mm-hmm.
like the Tesla, right? Or the Mandela effect.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
get Nelson Mandela, you go to look him up, now you have Mandela effect, surprise, surprise. And then like you're not remembering things right that you thought you remembered. It's almost like it becomes it's so ironic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that abstract thinking, like we have to be we have to know what we mean and mean what we say, and then stand behind that, and then also like let people think about things. Like we don't always have to over explain things. I think that's a problem I've always had. We'll always explain and explain and explain like three different ways, because I've felt so much blocks in communication that I've had over the years to people, and I know you do too, because you and I talk about really deep stuff. But when you try to convey this sometimes to other people, I've gotten into the habit of like, let me give you a parable, let me give you a story, let me give you an example
Mm-hmm.
on top of example, and really, if we can perfect our communication more and just dedicate to the words that we're trying to say, um, basically help humanity to lift themselves up, like rise to the occasion of communication,
Nice.
and also with art too. And so that's one of the things I was thinking about, is doing like almost like an art book, and
Mm.
allowing people to see it and just let it work on them without um Hildegard von Bingen too. Actually, I was thinking about her work. She has all that artwork, like, and you look at the artwork, and then like it, it's a form of initiation in and of itself. It brings you to those feelings and those points that can break through where other things can't break through, because it's gotten harder and harder to communicate with people. I feel so blocked with people. Even as a child, I felt that way. But now it's like people just can't understand basic things, and they're so defensive about everything. Like, you know,
Can I ask you a question quickly?
sure.
So, many of these scholars over the years have always puzzled about intuition and are we born, are some born with more intuition than others? Is it something that we can tap into? What's your um, opinion on intuition, for example?
Wow. Wow. It's so crazy, Ianto. Like, right before I got on the phone with you, this is before I got on the thing with you. Um, I can't believe this. I literally just wrote about intuition like a half hour ago. I
Wow.
had like I was getting ready, and then like I was writing about it because so much of my pathway, I hit a point like really 6 years ago when everything happened. Well, 8 years ago when everything really came down on me and happened to me. I was really into all that manifestation stuff and intuition and law of attraction and synchronicity. And when all that horrible stuff happened to me, I had such strong synchronicity at that time that I have never had in my life. And one thing specifically that happened to me, I always think about, and I could probably name 20 of them if I sat here and wrote them out. But one thing in particular that happened to me is I was invited to be on the board of a nonprofit, and it was supposed to help girls, Middle Eastern girls, Asian, like, Indian. I live in an area where there's a lot of like Arabic immigrants and things like that. And it was supposed to help to keep them from falling into trafficking. And like the plan was we're going to go to schools and like start educating, because some of these girls, especially the Muslim girls, there's so much shame around it. That's how they get tied in and they can't go to their parents. So it was something I was really passionate about. And the opportunity presented itself to me around 2018. And these people were very big, powerful people that doing this nonprofit. And I was so honored that they asked me to be a part of it. And so one of the women who was running it, I told her, I said, I'm only going to do this if it's all women. Like, we have to protect these girls. And if we have like if we have a man on the board, I don't want to take a chance of like, we got to do some type of basic protections. And I was really trying to, carve out some parameters of my own moral and ethical things. And so shortly after that, when I came to the board meeting, there was a guy on the board who was like a movie director and had a modeling company.
Oh,
And he worked for this billionaire, like Pakistani guy who was like living in the United States. I knew exactly who this guy was because I saw him at many political events. And so I looked at the woman, the doctor who invited me on the board, and I said, what is this? I thought we had this agreement. And she said, oh, no, he can really support it, like, financially. I said, no, I'm not going to do this. But the real moral of that story was the only reason why I agreed to do that nonprofit is because when I was asked, I didn't pray about it at all. And probably because my synchronicity was so strong at that time, and I thought I had so much intuition that I just really trusted myself, And so when I had met her at her office, she was a psychologist. She gave me all of her, like 50 of her business cards. And when I left, she said, here, give these to people. And I said, okay. I was a little bit offended because I'm like, what do you think? I'm your like spokesperson. So I left, I went home, and, I basically threw most of them out and I just kept like a couple. Well, 3 months later, when she called me to ask me to be on the board of that nonprofit, I was taking my dog for a walk, and I was probably about 5 houses down from my own house. And as I was talking to her, I looked down, and where my dog was peeing was her card, her business card that she gave me 3 months ago. And I said, yeah, right? I know. This is exactly, and this is like so. And so, anyways, I was on the phone with her and I was like, well, I got to do it. I'm going to have to do it. I mean, this has got to be the real thing. This is it. Because, like, and I remember telling her, and she was like, oh, that's the Holy Spirit, like give me some story.
one way or the other.
Yeah. So basically later when that happened with the board and I ended up pulling out of it because I started to see right away, like, they had called me also too. I got a call from them real quick and they said, listen, we got to put you as the president of the organization because we're filing some tax stuff. And they offered to give me a very nice, to run the nonprofit. I was going to be in a position where I was going to be able to make money, like as a job. And so I was looking forward to that because I wasn't working at the time. And so they pulled that on me though. Like they were doing some stuff and they were like, we're going to put you as a president, just like interim before we have a vote. And I said, you know what? No, I want you to take my name off of everything. I don't want to have anything to do with this. Like I even had to contact the people that we sent stuff for grant. I had to contact them and say, like, I am not a part of this anymore, just to let you know, because I was that scared. When I realized what it was and I saw what I walked into and what I could have potentially been walking into, which, they were trying to put me up there as fall guy. And so I was terrified. Like I was really, really terrified. And that in and of itself is what really made me shriek back because I was on such a synchronicity thing where I felt like, wow, I'm just so in tune. And yet, so many of those led me down the wrong path. And it made me really question what, like, what am I hooked up to? Like, really, what is my frequency connected to? Because I could see it wasn't something good. And it was really strong, but it was really leading me down the wrong path. So anyways, I came home and I wrote a little something about it actually. Look at this. I You're not gonna believe it. I have it right here. It's so weird because I feel like you and I had talked about like a couple days ago, like what we were gonna talk about. So this is it. You want me to read a little bit?
Yeah.
Just a little page. So it says synchronicity, intuition, and divine guidance, the lie of our emotions. And then, I just sort of jot things down when I have. So this is sort of, I guess, an improv the way I wrote it. Refusing the fantasy of our own emotions and moving from blind intuition of our vain self, worshiping ourselves and trusting ourselves, and instead of trusting into the Holy Spirit and divine counseling to give us discernment. New Age manifesting as constantly manifesting ourself and what we want in a loop. It's me, I know more, I know better, I know what I want matters. And then attributing 3D objects in the universe, which are tools that reflect our neurosis and our unhealed sin in our life, back to me, perpetually confirming the God I made within myself, for myself. Laws of attraction, a magnet of materialism, self-hypnosis manipulated by demons, giving a luciferic admonition of pseudo-responsibility without sorrowful confession, forgiveness, and reconciliation. And then I put a little star and I put movie Solaris. I don't know if you ever saw Tchaikovsky's movie Solaris, but I guess after I wrote this, I had sort of a revelation about that movie because in that movie, there's a sentient planet that's made out of water. And they go up there, and basically, the intelligence on the planet, they can't see it. There's no alien. They can't see the people. I mean, obviously, these beings are maybe gaseous beings, like in the time of Atlantis or Lemuria, where we didn't have a body. And so they sent like a spaceship up there, and when they got there, this intelligence was bringing things in their unconscious to life. And so like this guy's wife that had died came to him, and so they ended up taking over the whole ship because these people, even though they knew it wasn't real, they basically all went crazy because they were so far into themselves and their psyche. They got so fooled from the Solaris alien intelligence that they basically got lost in the dream. Like you realize, like that's the whole thing with the movie. So it's so funny. I just put that. So yeah, I just wrote that like a couple minutes ago before because I was trying to make sense exactly of what you said. I said, at what point is intuition? Because when all that terrible stuff first started happening to me on Ianto, like it affected they went after my family. I mean, I was at a point where I couldn't leave the house. Every time I left the house, well, I don't want to say every time, but I was attacked in public 3 times in 1 year. All everything, my websites were taken over. All my work was hacked. Like I was in, and then I had all these new age people coming to me saying like, oh, you manifested this, you attracted this, this is what you, and then, it's a double-edged sword because it does put it back in your hands and your responsibility of what's in your life. And that's actually a positive thing. But there's also a shame aspect to it because these people use it as like, oh, I'm only manifesting money and influencers or likes on Instagram. Why are these bad things happening to you? You must be. And so I realized like that's what really made me do a full circle and then come back to my faith is because when I hit that wall around 2018 or 2019, I just saw like where it started and ended for me. Like I was gonna loop back, and basically I needed better intuition. I needed more than just synchronicity. Like I needed to be able to have better discernment. So thank God, I feel like I do have that now. I'm a much more careful person. But I'm very limited now. I'm very, very limited. I'm very protective over myself and people that I connect with now. And that's not because I don't trust myself anymore, but just because I'm really trying to dedicate myself to being sincere and like giving each person I meet and people in my life more, you know, and I guess just growing on that, as opposed to, I think when you and I first met so many years ago, probably 10 years ago now, I was one of the most networked people here, like where I live, even probably for the United States. I was a person, I worked in politics also, with health, and I was a person everybody called on. And I knew so many people. And I had such that, like, a sort of like a false sort of Christian ideal of just like being nice to everybody. Like, I'm nice to them, they'll be nice to me. There was no pay it forward. Like, when stuff happened to me, everybody I thought was my friends, people I thought I trusted, people I thought were good people, people who could help me and didn't. Um, it made me realize like I was in the lion's den and I had trusted people I should not have trusted. And, it's taken me, I mean, pretty much the whole time you've known me. I mean, I basically went like a year and not even barely leaving the house, just really praying, like getting myself in a salt bath, 24-hour a day salt bath. I think we talked about sensory deprivation. I did that for a year, and that was absolutely life-changing. Like, I really think that sensory deprivation really helped to clear out, like, as far as intuition, um, and real sensory deprivation. I don't know if you guys have it over there. We have sensory deprivation, like,
The tanks.
pods here.
Mm.
Yeah, people have opened up. They're like, you can go, but they're not really sensory deprivation because, like, let's face it, people can't really handle sensory deprivation. So you can put your iPods on, you can do the color lights and get quote unquote color therapy with it. And so it's basically like a glorified bath. But if you do true sensory deprivation, no sound, no light, just floating, in 1 hour, it's so transformative. I wish I could do that actually more because I haven't, it's probably been about 5 or 6 years since I've been back, but it's an investment. Like if I could put it in my home, I would. I would just be sitting in that
Yeah, I
dark
tell you what,
silence all day.
yeah, definitely. I'd love to have a go. When I was at the Healing Festival in London last year, they had a guy from Russia who made a bed out of bees. So he had
Oh,
the bees, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of bees, all right, and they were in this bed, and you would lie on it, and you would get the vibration, and it was in a pitch black room with you couldn't see, all you could hear was the bees, and you just lay there you didn't even know how long you'd been there. He would come and collect you, sometimes it'd be an hour and a half. So you had no idea when you were leaving either. You just had to just immerse yourself in the feeling, it was
wow.
very
Wow,
surreal.
that's incredible. I can't, did you do it?
Yeah, yeah.
You did? How long did you stay
It
in
was about
for?
an hour and a half. You actually felt as if you were levitating.
Wow, because was it like a hum, like a zzz,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it resonates.
Yeah, and you tend to focus more on it over time. You become it, and it becomes you. It actually feels as if
Wow.
you're leaving the ground. It's
Wow.
yeah,
There's so much going on with and that's actually something new for me too that's opened up just within the last year
yeah.
through Steiner's work is the Russian, like the Eastern European and the Russian Slavic mindset and gift to humanity, which was something I didn't know or realize until Steiner's work. And just recently I started really getting into, I don't know if you know Vladimir Solovyev's work.
Like that.
He's one of the most important like writers in and he's like a mystic in Russian history, Vladimir Solovyev, and I believe he was friends with Dostoevsky or maybe Tolstoy. I don't want to get it wrong. I'm just really getting into it right now.
Yeah.
I just got his book actually. I'll show it to you right here. Oh, look it. I got two to show you right here behind me. I just happen to have. I just ordered them and they just came. So this is Vladimir Solovyev's book, The Russian Mystic. And this one was the one I was telling you about, The Parsifal by Charles Kovacs.
The audience
Really,
as well.
really nice book.
Yeah. Have you
But
read,
I'm really into that Solovyev.
have you read Anastasia quickly while I remember? Do you remember the book Anastasia?
No, is that about the Romanovs?
Yeah, and it goes like a little bit deeper into Russian culture, backstory, where they sort of originate from.
Really?
Broader. Yeah, it's a fascinating book.
Do you know who wrote it?
I would be lying if I said I did right now.
I'm gonna look it up
Yeah,
because I
yeah, yeah.
feel very
I think it's an
one
important
thing
book as well.
one thing that when Steiner talks about psychology,
Yeah,
he talks about before it became like a solidified materialistic science, like whatever science is to us now. It was an art, you know, and he talks about how like in the Greek plays how psychology was an art, and like we learned through these things. And he talks a lot about Dostoevsky's book, The Brothers Karamazov. Have you ever read that? I'll send you a link because I found one on YouTube, like the whole book's on YouTube. I've been slowly going through it because it's a big book, and I figured I'll do the YouTube listen and then I'll read it. But he talks so much about how that book is a true, like, how do we say, I don't want to say this word platform, but it's a true representation and I want to say like I don't know why the word's escaping me, like
so
the
yeah,
book to
like a true
like a teaching book.
in person, a true of psychology itself. So it would be, like a true. Um, yeah, the word alludes me.
Like a learning book, right? I don't know, it's like a
Yeah,
workbook, but that's not what I want to say. But he's the characters, like I'm understanding when he said that, like
yeah.
it's these three brothers and their father, and like in their relation, and it goes so far into the psyche of each person and each and how they interact. And like he was saying, like Dostoevsky's work was so powerful in that way where he all of his work pretty much he was able to convey the human psyche in a way where we could read it and also learn from it and seek healing. You know, it's one thing to watch a movie, right? We watch these movies and like I'm like, what is this telling us? Like, what am I supposed to glean from this? Like, it's horrible. Like, I can't, you know, and I get disgusted too with actors who agree to do roles like that woman who just died, that actress, she I think her name is Catherine O'Hara or whatever. She did a movie which was so offensive to me, which was like a Christmas movie, and basically everybody was at Christmas and the kids opened up their computer and they saw her mom had their mom on Christmas had uploaded a sex video, and so it was supposed to be a funny Christmas movie. I was so offended and so upset and so I actually just recently got into an argument with someone when she died because I said I can't believe she did that movie. That movie to me is absolutely, and so they said, well, yeah, because you know we're supposed to watch it and know not to do that. And I'm like, are we? Are you really watching that and realizing not to do it? Because to me it looks like they normalized it. So I think some of our cinema and what we're like exposed to now is normalizing things, and it's not bringing us to the point where we would see something and we're like, wow, it's so grotesque. I don't want to do that. Like Faust, which is so basic, you know, like you go in Faust, you see he goes through all this necessary things from the beginning to the end, and then you arrive at the end with sort of this epiphany. But we're missing, and I think you know the word for that, you know, the term Deus ex machina. Have you ever heard that?
It does feel as if it's normalizing something as well, isn't it?
You've probably heard of it. There's actually a movie called Ex Machina, which is really good. But it's basically called, the term is like God out of the machine, which is ironic now because that's what they're trying to do with the computer. But in ancient times, like a couple hundred years ago, they used that term to describe like when you were having a play and there were actors and they wanted to end it. Like they wanted to end the play quickly, maybe without like a real ending of like whatever. The Deus Ex Machina would be like something like God comes out of the sky, an angel, and then everything's good and it like ends. So it's almost like you put something maybe miraculous or whatever, but they said there's also sort of a negative connotation because it's like they brought the God, like they basically bring the God to save the story, and then you're basically bailing on the story as well. So I think it's interesting. I've always liked that concept that they have the Deus Ex Machina and how it's now it's actually literally they're trying to create that or make that like into some type of idea of God coming out of the machine. Um so yeah, that's we're not getting what we need to get out of our stories, and we're missing the psychology part, that the art of psychology more so than the science, because you know like the science now is just a pill that you take the pill and you watch the movie and you're just like this all looks good to me, I guess I'll do it. Like it's a different, it's almost like the Deus Ex Machina they've created where there's no resolution. Wow, that's really the word I think we should be talking about, is resolution, right? Like we're not getting the resolution in health because we're just taking the medicine and like that's just keeping us like abating symptoms. So there's no health resolution. Um, like we're not, even in relationships, people are ghosting each other. So we're missing healthy resolution, like the ability to resolve things in a healthy way. And I know for myself, I need to do that. Like, I've never been very successful with, especially in relationships I've had. Like, I've never been able to stay friends with people, like with, you know, when I had boyfriends and things or ex-husbands. I've never been able to maintain that like friendship thing. It's always like something so horrible ends up happening. There's just not a resolution that's so I don't know, I've been looking at that myself, you know, honestly. I don't like that. Obviously I've contributed to that in my life, and now I'm realizing that'll be our next topic of discussion because I need to figure that out. I guess I got to write on that next. Like,
Yeah.
why can't I have a healthy resolution?
Well, my 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 I get on really well with my child's mother. To be fair, considering we get on really well actually, which is
Well, you
fundamental.
know, I never had that conversation with you before about your son. I always knew about you and your son, and I don't think you and I ever talked about that, but that's really
Yeah,
nice.
we
I
lived
mean,
apart for 14 years because we had some immigration issues. Because, like he always says to me, why do you get married to a foreign woman? You know, and I'm saying, well, you wouldn't be here otherwise. You know.
right,
So,
right, yeah.
young people, they come out with these things and you've got to try and, uh, deal with them. But yeah, I get on really well with her considering the hassle it caused us as a family. And, I've eventually managed to improve my relationship with my son after being estranged for over 14 years and not under the best circumstances.
Oh,
I put a
yeah,
post
I
up.
did not realize that you guys were estranged for that long. I remember when like
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
came back he came back into your life just really a couple years ago, right?
That's right.
I
Yeah,
feel like you and I lost touch a little bit, and then
yeah, and he was unfortunate
wow,
enough
that's
to
a real
get into.
blessing.
Yeah, he got some trouble with the police and ended up having to go away for a while. Which again is a worry as a parent, isn't it? Because you always worry about your child, as we do. But it's
Right?
been,
Yeah, and it takes
yeah,
something like that to happen often.
yeah. So that was another challenge on top of the whole not living together, single father type of scenario, and him obviously now going into his 20s. So obviously he's maturing as a young man as well. Um, yes, but we had a lovely time over Christmas, and our relationship now is coming along nicely. And the only thing I had no experience as a father, I'll be honest, but I just used love really as a way of just trying to be as loving as I can in situations and not overreacting and just having a lot of empathy. And it worked in the end. Some people were saying, "Oh, you're a bit too soft," and you're this. Well, I have no idea whether I was too hard or too soft. I was just trying whatever is working, really, because it can be difficult. There's no
I
set
think most
rule
of
for
us,
every.
I mean, in parenthood, we've lost it. No, you're right. It's not just unique to you. It probably feels more so to you that way because you know you've had that gap in between. But that goes back to even Wilhelm Reich's work and research. You know, we've lost our ability to parent, these animals. Isn't it interesting how like when animals like people love, like you have all these videos of like, oh look, my dog's watching TV, as if this dog has evolved um to the point where it's watching TV now. Like that's not a process of like good evolution. um but these animals know like to take care of their children, to feed them, to make a nest for them, to do all these things. And humans for the last 100 years or so have really lost those instincts. I mean, not even like, I guess instinct would become before intuition, right? Because like if like our instinct isn't working, then we have to rely on our intuition, which is supposed to like tap into basically our higher self, maybe like our guardian angel that's looking out for us and like don't run across the street or something. But instinct, like we've really been robbed of that. Like women can't birth their babies anymore. Um, women can't nurse their babies anymore. I mean, I'm not saying that as a blanket of but the masses, but I kind of am, because it is sort of a mass epidemic and we're all really in the dark. So many of it, I know my parents as well. Like my parents, I felt like my parents came from good families, but they dropped the ball with me as well. Like, I don't know. And then people read books, they all need to read these parenting books and everything. But Reich would say that it's our neurosis, we're armored people, and we're basically functioning through that filter. That's the armor is always there first. So everything we try to do. And I think too, in my book, I think maybe you remember when I was writing about like, because I used to live in by Ann Arbor, which is a very liberal community with the college, U of M there. And there was this big, everybody's wearing their babies, home birth, there's a big mother movement push. But there's also so many of these people that are like trying to get back to like tribal, like the way it was 200 years ago. Like if we were all in the tribe, our kids would be just, and like it's a thing. It's a huge thing in these like mother communities. And um the Continuum concept book um, where the research showed that the more these mothers, modern mothers, tried to mimic or act like these ancient tribal mothers in their parenting, the more sick their kids were, the more neurotic, the more bratty, the more demanding, the more horrible these kids acted, because it's almost such a form of white. I hate to use the word white. I feel like I want to move past that. And now, like we should be ready to like, sort of like move past some of these labels, but it is a sort of form of white appropriation where we think that we don't have a point of reference. I never lived on a tribe somewhere with some people in South America, like, you know what I mean? And yet this idea, like, I'm gonna live in my house here, like, with my computer, and then I'm gonna be able to recreate a tribal environment for my child. And even if you have a community of people, you just get like a community of sickos and weirdos because they're all, and it's just funny because since I left that area, 15, 20 years ago, I've slowly have seen people like my midwife, for example, she's over here, she moved out of that area. And I was like, I can't even believe you're gone too. It's like people you can only take so much because it does become very culty and it starts going against your, in a way, like your basic, like, this just doesn't make sense to me. And like, like I remember one thing was like this woman was like yelling at me because I had broken my pelvis and I had my baby in a stroller and I was feeding my son in a stroller. And like this woman was like, oh, you should be carrying your baby in like a thing. And I was like, I agree with that. I should, but I have a broken pelvis. I can't. And like as I'm talking to her, she was a vegetarian and her son was under the table eating scraps, like literally eating off the ground. Like he wanted, I don't know, a little meat, a little something so bad. And like it just was such an ironic moment in my life. I'm like, I can't believe I'm looking at this woman have this conversation about baby wearing when this kid was on the ground, like an animal, just like wanting to grab whatever he could. Like maybe he had a peak of craving because he was so hungry, he wasn't getting what he needed, whatever. Sometimes these people, they do the raw food. It's not just vegetarian, like they can go really far off. Um, but that's just something that's always sort of stuck with me of like the limits of there's so much we have to learn and get back to. We do need to get back to natural parenting, but I think we need to ask ourselves, what is natural parenting? And if we don't have somebody that's shown us that, you can't even teach it. We have to be shown that. You can't teach empathy. We have to be shown empathy. What are we really doing, So yeah, anyways, I'm just giving you that story to let you know, like, don't be so hard on yourself because you're dealing with the same feelings of like, I was a stay at home Waldorf homeschooling mom and felt that all day, 24 hours a day. We feel it, we know it. But that's really the first stage of healing. Like that's it. We start realizing and then we know we got to do different. We just can't fall into a rabbit hole and get stuck too long. Because sometimes we got to get in, we find out something new, we get in and we get out. We don't have to stay in that mindset forever. Um, right? We got to be, what's that word? Like, um, flexible, like we got to be able to move and get in, like, yeah, exactly, adaptation. Like and people have accused me of that over the years of being like, I'd get into something, I'd be really into it, maybe for a year, 6 months, and I'd get out, and that they think I was being flighty. But I feel like as you get old, you say, that served my purpose, that taught me what it needed to teach me within that moment. Now I'm on to something else now. Like, it's okay. Like, I'm gonna make it. Like, I trust, you know what I mean? You got to trust the process, kind of. I think there's a fear of people like learning something new. Um,
Just did a project on hemp and mycelium, and I put myself into it for 7 months to create something for the construction industry. And unfortunately, it would have been a big impact statement for Wales. It would have helped the farmers, the environment, the earth, you name it, really. But it was a little bit ahead of its time, and we can't quite get it going at the moment. But I don't think any of that knowledge or any of that know-how has gone to waste. I think it's just something that'll, it will come in the future for me. So, it's like getting back.
It's not ready yet.
No, exactly.
We got to
And
catch up.
I don't kick myself for studying hemp for 7 months at all. It's invaluable information. But obviously, right now, I'm doing a few different things, so I get your point there completely. And we've got to be adaptable, to these things and just see where we go and be open to do new things as well.
I think too, we talked about Julian the apostate a little bit.
Yeah, I've got that down here now, if you want.
Yeah, that's always was interesting to me, just Steiner's opinion of it, where
Yeah.
he just said that, people born into an era that they like the world doesn't match them. They're born into a time where they were like, either connected to, and so for Julian the apostate, the world had already moved on in this new direction. He said, like, and I'm speaking just of Steiner's opinion, not my own.
Yeah.
And the world had already moved on, and like Julian was taught a different way by different people, and he was in this pathway, and he wanted to go back to the pagan way. Like he really believed, like, we got to go back to that. We got to go back. And like Steiner was just relating that to him as atavistic, but atavism is like the biological person, like who's misplaced basically biologically, and that like Julian would have been able to survive. I mean, he was in a very political position where he was at, but I think for you and me, we're those people, you and I project in the future and the past. Like we walk among in different worlds easily, you and I. And part of that wisdom has to come that we have to know when to hold them, when to fold them, so to speak, like things that I've known and I learned when I was early on. I was really mad things were hidden, things I knew that were hidden in humanity. And I thought, oh, it's this big, not just, I hate to use the word conspiracy, but like making like a hatred and distrust for, I don't know, the forces that run the earth, right? But now, as I've got older, I've seen some of these things and I understand why these things are hidden and that humanity's not ready for it yet. And that actually goes to Solovyev's work about, and Steiner talks about it too. There's certain things Steiner wasn't able to talk about. Like people will say, like, why didn't he talk about this or that? And he tells you, like, it's not ready yet. Like, and he knows because, let's face it, Reich was pretty much taken out. Like, he was arrested and then he died mysteriously before he went to trial. And I have a ton of people I know and mentors that were taken out, but Steiner wasn't. And the reason why is Steiner had enough wisdom to know what he was allowed to speak about for that time period, which was huge because he gave us so much information, which was hidden for so long, because he was a Rosicrucian. So we got such a volume of information that was hidden, but he also knew not to go past that. And like, if you want to talk, like next time we get together, if you want to talk a little bit about HPB, Helena Blavatsky, and I find that whole connection with Steiner and HPB very, very fascinating. I think just especially for me, because, I was in Ayurveda. I have an Ayurvedic doctorate. I've always felt very connected to Indian medicine, and I spent so many years within the Indian mindset and community. And so Helena Blavatsky's always been a very interesting figure to me.
Yes.
And how her and Steiner separated, and that whole story is, if you ever want to talk about that, I just love that.
Yeah, that.
It's a real, right?
Yeah.
It's a point where actually like she left off and then it was like information that's being dispensed in humanity, and like knowing like we really can't. I'm a button pusher. I've been a button pusher my whole life. I've had to really tell myself, like, I don't need to go around pushing all the buttons. I can feel the environment, you know, and I can almost like capoeira, the energy you get, you push and you receive, you push and you receive. I've always been like a pusher, 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 pusher to where the balloon breaks.
So do you do
And
you,
that hasn't served me well.
do you believe that this is the age of disclosure now, or again is that about discernment? Because to the general public here now, is look at all the different things that's on the mainstream media now. Now we know that could be socially engineered or what have you, but there's so much, let's say, information now coming to the general public um, to do with celebrities and what they get up to and who runs the world and things like that. So again, is that a sort of a controlled disclosure there to confuse, or are we in a time now of disclosure, and how do we manage that discernment?
I think you're right. I mean, I think, and I know Steiner talks about this. So basically, Steiner stated there was the fall of the spirits of darkness in the late 1870s, which brought upon the spiritism movement, where, they were conjuring all those spirits and the
Yeah,
number at that time. Remember when you were there? But you were there was that time when everybody was having those seances and they were bringing in these spirits, and like that's also connected to the HPV stuff. But Steiner stated this. He stated that this is the age of information, and that really what's happening is there's an opening. There's an opening for us because basically the spiritual world has gotten closer to us and it's more palpable now. And so the psyops with that, the controlled opposition, is doing like the Truman Show. Like we got there's an opening right here. We can see it. It's above our head, but they just keep throwing all this stuff on top of it, so we can't see past their grid. I recognize this as a grid. I've actually seen it as a grid, like
hmm,
when I've seen in the astral world. I don't know if you've ever seen a grid, but I've seen a grid. Like I
mm,
understand it as a grid above us.
yeah,
That's how I that's how I that's how I know it to be. And so all this other information is just being laid on top of it so that we can't see. And then that goes into how Steiner says we have Lucifer and Ahriman, two different streams. One's like through the computer and science, and nature actually is with Ahriman, and then the Luciferic stream. And Luciferic stream is basically like the false Christ stream, which leads people where they think that they're light, they think they're all this. But like in that movie Poltergeist, that made me think of that movie Poltergeist at the end with the little girl, and they said, don't
yeah,
go into that light, that's the false light. And she was going into that false light. So that's really what's happening right now, is that it's embraceable for us, for those who are truly tuned in, and those who are truly called. But there's so much effort to put so much stuff to block that, to keep us from getting, so they keep you in the spin and they keep you in the loop of the Ouroboros loop of just more information. What are the celebrities are doing? All the celebrities are
yeah,
men, all the women are men, all the men are women. Um, I feel like every time I see this, and they give you 90% true information, but then that 10% is enough to keep you in the wrong direction and like not able to get out of the algorithm or echo chamber. So it's a real marriage of Ahriman and Lucifer right now. It's a real connection of the two sides of, you know, these two forces uniting to keep us from ascending. So they make us think like you ascended, but you actually really just ascended here. You're still in the grid. You're still under, you haven't actually ascended. There's a lot of people right now who believe and they're happy with that. And I think Steiner says the thing is too, is the reason why they're happy with that is because when they start getting material, when they start ascending and they start seeing personal benefit, like you start maybe making more money or things start opening up to you, these blessings start opening to you, these people get stuck in the grid right there because that's just enough for them. They're like, I'm happy. This is all I want. And so they just don't push through to a higher consciousness. So I think you're right. I think it is the age of information and disclosure, but so much is being disclosed and we can't trust it. We don't really have to. Like, this is the thing we don't need to know.
Yeah.
One thing that Steiner always said about anxiety, and I have it written down, I remember I wrote it down, because he said it leads so many people astray, is that your ability to know something, that you knowing about something isn't just enough to change it or make it different. Like, if you're thinking about it's a flat earth and you're just thinking about it all the time and like, oh, this is going on with the earth flat, and you just, that's not like you're spending so much time on something that like you're just spinning your wheels. It's not enough to, like, are you really going to change the world with just thinking about this all the time? So we have to mobilize our thinking. It's got to be flexible. And then we have to have the courage and the determination, the tenacity. And I think that's something you and I both share. I've been very tenacious my whole life. That's why I'm still going. And if you don't have tenacity, some of these people just don't have tenacity. They've given up their will. And that, by the way, Steiner says there's no such thing as ego death. There's will death. Our will can die where we give our will over, but our ego can't die. He said we can't live without our ego. Like, our ego has a lot of good points to it because it really defines us as who we are. So these people are like, oh, my ego's dead, hashtag ego dead. You know what I mean? Like, it leads us, and so a lot of people are getting stuck under, and so we got to constantly, I mean, I wish I could get off social media. I think I told you I can't get off the court order. So I'm still just hanging out just like until I can get my court order, because I'm stuck in the metaverse, but constantly trying to change our what we click on. Don't look at something too long. Being able to see, like, you start following a new account, does it seem right to you, things seem off, whatever, get in, get out. We have to be very astute in our mind and aware of what we're looking at.
Yeah, most definitely. Like we've already been speaking for an hour and a half, so we're doing really well here.
I know, I'm just looking to plug my thing in right now because I just got a message that's called on. I think it's,
I'm just we've covered an awful lot of things. Obviously, there are plenty of things we can go in depth into.
I know, I feel like you and I always do really good together. I feel like we give this good, like, sort of vibe of like,
Can I just
I
ask
feel like
you? So, let's cover just a little quick one. Secret societies in the 1800s. Just a quick brief. What is that Steiner who had a view on that? Is it?
well, he's got a really good lecture on YouTube about Freemasonry.
Okay.
And I think that Steiner, if he was alive today, would be absolutely sick and disgusted about where these secret societies have gone and where they're at and what they've become. But he was always clear that they served a purpose to carry the information through humanity, to dispense the information, because, we're in an age of disclosure. And so part of what's happening with this disclosure is these societies, these lodges are trying to control what's coming out and hide. And it's not just so that they want to block us from, ascending or going to heaven. Part of it is they believe that they're in control. They're trying to control everything. They're trying to control our future. They have where our world wants to go, where they want it to go. There's also different lodges that are competing. And so he said back in the 1900s, he said that, like, sadly, almost pretty much all of them are just country clubs. He already knew they turned into like a country club of just like, not doing what he said the rituals that they were meant to do that were supposed to bring them, like reenact what they did in Egypt and Greece, a lot of the rituals to go in the lodge, they would reenact these things as a symbol of initiation because they were being, let's face it, it was a part of initiation.
Yeah.
And so he said that these people, even back then in these lodges, were doing these rituals, and they didn't have an understanding, and it wasn't really a feeling within them to where they were like, oh, this is why I'm doing that. This is what it is. This is, where they're actually going through initiation and the part of initiation is you're going through a soul transformation. So these people were just doing the ritual so they could get a better job, meet some friends with, people are trying to get out of the caste system with it. They use it as a means to try to get out of their social economic block or hole that let's face it, most of us are stuck in. And they like the idea of having this ability of like, wow, I can get out of my situation if I align with this group and these people. And so he said back then that, and it's beautiful, if you listen to his Freemasonry, it's like it's 4 or 5 hours long. It's very, and he talks about like, it's beautiful when you understand, and he goes through like what it was and how it's connected to the Old Testament and like Cain and Abel, and it's really beautiful to learn about. But he says it's not what it is anymore, and it's become an anachronism. It was an anachronism in the early 1900s, and then he also describes how that's what happened in Europe with World War II and World War I. Was it started with Napoleon? It came from England, and the lodges basically took over France, and they placed Napoleon there because Napoleon was meant to give the lodge the monarchy. So they wanted the people to think that, oh, this is our first time we have like a new monarch. We don't have a monarchy of a bloodline anymore, right? And so that's what they thought. But really what it was is it switched out the monarchy of the bloodline for the lodge to get a lodge person in there.
Yeah.
And so a new monarchy, not based on bloodline, but through, and so for the normal people saw that as like, oh wow, this is true freedom, like the church has been subdued, this guy's getting rid of the monarchy, but he was being backed by the lodges. And so what happened was these people, it's like these country club, it's money, right? So like these elite people got in that were just made themselves a new monarchy, and they took over Europe. And like Steiner goes into Franz Ferdinand, how that was the last enclave. He refused to let them in. He refused to let the lodges in, and then they took him out. And also connected to the early 1900s is Pope Pius. Like Pope Pius refused to, when they came to him and they wanted his support, that's the reason why when he wouldn't support them, that's when World War II started. So if you look also, just to throw another name, Maximilian Kolbe, he's a saint. He was in Rome, I think it was 1916, and I don't want to use the word again, I'm just going to say the lodge. The lodge was there at the Vatican, and they were protesting the Vatican because the Vatican was trying to block the lodges at that time. So there's that Alta Vendita, which they made because, you're not allowed to be Catholic and a lodge member. And so the Alta Vendita, yeah, it's been banned for, it's been banned for 200 years. So if you meet a Catholic, like say Joe Biden in the United States president, he was supposed to be Catholic, but he's not because he was a lodge member, and they take an oath above that. So it was blocked a long time ago. And so in the early 1900s, the lodges were trying to take down the Vatican, and they created what's called the Alta Vendita, which is basically one day they were going to take over the Vatican and they were going to infiltrate, which pretty much they have, especially in the United States. A lot of Catholic churches have been infiltrated, and from what we can see just happened a couple months ago with King Charles at the Vatican, to me that was an absolute, like, okay, it's happened. Like, I feel like the Alta Vendita's been completed, but I can, I have actually some of that stuff. Some of that stuff I have on a playlist I can send you if you're interested in it. But I think it's really good. I think that, I think that Steiner would have never guessed it would have come to this level of corruption. And I think, did you see in Britain, they just January 2026 passed that law against the lodges? Because it was connected to that David Morgan. I don't know if you saw that series. There's a show called Pack. It's very good. It's a British show about the biggest corrupt media case in the world was through News of the World and The Guardian, and it's a show. I'm actually watching it right now, but because of that case, they just passed a law against the lodges for the first time in UK just a couple 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And they show that there was 300 police officers that were in the lodges, and so many crimes and murders and horrible things were happening, and there were so many people on so many levels protecting it through the media and everything. They actually passed this law which says if you're in the lodge, you have to disclose it.
Because it's a
And this is huge.
it's a big conflict of interest, isn't it? If you're a politician,
Yeah, I mean, it's my,
public
if you
servant,
watch that,
you know.
you understand my case, because when I watched that hack, this is exactly what I'm up against. Like, I had press privileges, I was in the media, and like when I got taken down, nobody would touch my story.
Yeah.
The court, everybody was in on it. And so all it really takes, let's face it, everybody has a phone. Anybody just has to send a text message like, don't give her justice.
John Wick.
Right? That's another, it's so true. It's so true. Thank you, though. I appreciate that. Like, that's cool. I didn't really think about that. I know my friend calls me a flashbang, in the military what a flashbang is.
Yeah.
And he calls me a flashbang, and I love that, because I'm always like, wow, that's like a real, like, I'll take it. Like,
Yeah. Oh, fuck that.
But so, yeah, that's a big deal. I hope that us in the United States, I hope this will, because that's exactly what we're up against and what's happening. And it's no longer a group I mean, they're controlling things, but they're controlling things for their own ends and for the detriment. And it was never meant to be like that. There were, many years where they were like the church was the enemy because they were hiding information and blacking people. And, it's kind of like they created a counterforce, which was a good thing because it checked the church back in the day. But now it's become work. I mean, now it's basically it became opposite, and like they're unifying. Everybody's unifying right now.
Do you think that the Templars are just another faction of this? Do you think these days, because they were originally connected to the church, weren't they?
Yeah, I think the Templars are good, actually. Steiner talks a lot about the Templars.
Okay.
I think they got a bad rap. I think they did fizzle out into sort of like a greedy, corrupt organization after a while. But for the most part, I mean, it's really hard for us to look back on these things in history and I mean, I guess if we're going to be abstract, if we should be abstract in our thinking, which we shouldn't, but if we are, we have to really take what we know about history with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And like somebody I always think about is Hildegard von Bingen. I mean, she was back in like the 1100s, and like we're told that was the Dark Ages, and the church was going around killing all these women and the Inquisitions. Yet time and time again, like we see people, Saint Teresa of Avila in Spain is another one, where this woman was getting messages from God. She went to the Pope. He gave her land, he gave her property, she was making music, she was healing people, she was writing down all her messages from God. Like, she was protected. And if the church should have killed anyone, you'd think they would have went after her as a witch. And she did. There were a lot of, like, priests and friars back then that was trying to get rid of Hildegard von Bingen, and like it didn't work. So we just know from that things really aren't really what they're seem. It wasn't a totally dark ages. I mean, if you look at the work that she was able to do and accomplish, and she created that old separate language too. I don't know if you ever saw that, but she
No.
had like a language come to her and she's written it all down. Like,
Wow.
it's pretty incredible. Like her music, and I just watched a story about her recently. Like, I watched a little documentary, and it's just, you're thinking, this is 1100. Aren't we told like women were, like, I don't know, in a dungeon, like
Yeah.
being tortured or whatever?
What
Like,
was her name again, just for the audience?
Hildegard von Bingen, from
Hildegard von
Germany.
Bingen.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful, like the art. And I think
Mm.
I think once you start listening to the music and you look at her art, she's basically an initiate. She's an initiate that truly, and I think that's what she gave us. Like, if you look at her art and her music, it's like a pathway of initiation
Mm.
in and of itself. So yeah, so the Templar stuff, I think the Templars, there was a time, things had to be protected. And, I look at it too with the Mother of God, like the Mater Dei. I mean, one of the few organizations that's protected the Mother God, Godmother. And that, to me, that was something worthy of protection with Joan of Arc. And we talked about it.
Mm.
Joan of Arc, the same time, Owen, what's his name again? Owen,
Owen Glendower.
yeah, Glyndor.
Mm.
Yeah. At the same time, those people that came at that time, these true revolutionaries, so I think we have to be hopeful. I think there's a lot to feel good about. I think there's a lot to, it's not as dark as it seems. We have to be able to tap in, have difficult conversations, and, just fight the good fight, keep going. You see there's people all around us that have just succumbed to this. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And also Steiner said in these days, like, we'll be seeing people who look like demons. Like, he said they'll be in their lower impulses like animals, and like their faces will change. And he said we'll start to be able to recognize people by their faces.
Mm.
Like, if they're good or evil, you'll be able to just see, kind of like, who I always think of is that Willem Dafoe,
Oh, yeah.
which he was a good looking dude back in the day, but he did that movie, That Last Temptation of Christ. And then after, he started looking like a demon. Like, every time I saw that guy after, like, if you look at his face, I'm always like, that's because he did that movie. He's looking like a demon. Like, he's got a demon face. Like, some of these people, you look at them and it's like they can't even hide it. So I don't know if they're trying to use plastic surgery to hide basically what their faces are becoming. Like, people's faces are so distorted now. That's why I'm really like, I want the silver hair. I'm starting to get I'm waiting to get the silver hair. I feel like I want to celebrate this time of, like, I'm here, I'm still going, I got the wisdom hair, like, this is my face.
I've got more than enough
So
silver hair, white hair for you. You can lend that some at any time you want. It's just me.
I got excited because I was like, I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad they're coming in white. Like, it's not that salt and pepper.
You're doing
So I'm
well,
hoping, like,
though.
one day I'm gonna wake up and it's just gonna be like, psh,
You're
and then I'll
doing
be
it.
like on Dune, like
Yeah,
the Bene Gesserit.
yeah. You know you're doing well.
I'll be ready to take the spice.
Yeah. Right, let me just think. What can we end on? Yeah, so you've got a new book coming out, haven't you? Just do you want to
Yeah, I do
anything
have a
on that
book
quickly?
soon. I wrote it, it's written in Italian.
Wow. Okay.
It's my first, it's, yeah, it's, I know. It's something new and different for me. It's a story of how I met my husband. and it's a very short little book. It's a little like love story.
Oh, nice.
It's called Ultramare, and I just wanted, I basically started recording, like my husband and I, like, it's a true love story. People always told me, like, you got to write it down, you got to write it down. So I did. And so I'm excited to get that out. I don't know if I'm going to translate it in English because I feel like it loses sort of some of its meaning in translation. But
Yeah,
I think if I put it on Amazon, I think people should be able to translate it if they're interested. But there's going to be a series of Italian books I've written. They're little sort of like lost in translation between Americans and Europeans, which you probably would enjoy, like how I've had these sort of interesting conversations with Europeans and like our different ideas and like almost a comparative analysis, some interesting. So I've sort of jotted those down and I'm going to make a series of those. It's sort of been fun for me. But my bigger series I want to let out soon. Hopefully, like I've got several things I'm working on, and I'd like to do again like almost like a regular book, an art book to go with it. Have a little package come out of something like really, it's going to be body, mind, spirit, soul. So it's going to be the next level of Beyond Natural Cures, but I'm hopefully soon. As things wrap up for me, I hope to have some of my situations wrapped up this year. I've devoted too much time to this, and it's it, it's been really just all encompassing, it's taken too much of my mind, too much of my creativity, so I need to really focus on that. So actually talking to you now makes me want to work on it again, so maybe
yeah,
next time we talk I'll
yeah,
be
yeah.
ready for the next level.
Wait, it's funny how we both have an affinity with Italy as well. I've just come back from there. I love the country. I spent time in Naples, and yeah, it's funny how
Yeah,
we.
those pictures, you showed me those pictures. Wow, I
Yeah,
haven't been there
it's
actually.
an amazing. I love the country, the people, culture. Just amazing. Love it, love it. Yeah. Anyway, Rory,
It's
we're
really
nearly hitting the 2 hour mark, and all I'd like to say is just thank you very much for coming on the show, for being interviewed, for being charming, and just giving the audience such a wide variety of knowledge, wisdom. I could go on all day giving you compliments, so thank you
thank
so
you. I
much.
appreciate you.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you so
and
much. I appreciate you so much, and bless you and your son and his beautiful mother
yeah.
too.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You take care, and we'll get you on again at some point, and I'm sure we'll fill another episode. So, thank you so much. This has
Okay.
been Wales, Ianto, Wales and Beyond with Dr. Aurore Heinze, and again, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.